for the time being, the reason that I'm using an AI voiceover so that people can listen to it is because it's free. For me, it's a really low cost way to turn it into audio. There are mistakes in it. There are bits where it goes way weird. The aspiration for me is once I've got the novel completed, then I'll hire a human to actually do the voiceover for the audio book. Hello, I'm Samuel George London. I'm the writer of Alpha Guard, which is a sci-fi thriller novel best described as Jack Reacher in space. I also wrote quite a few comic books, including the Milford Green saga, which is like a Victorians versus aliens type story. You can find me at Samuel G. London on X and Instagram, and even make sure that you head on over to my Substack, alphaguard.substack.com, and read my writings right there. And you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. Our returning guest is, of course, the creator of Milford Green. He is coming back to the show with Alpha Guard, which is a prose novel series, which is going to be an amazing read because it's free on Substack. Crazy. Don't know how he's going to do it, but he's done it. We're joined by the ever-talented Samuel George London. Of course, he's a podcast host as well. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Well, once I stop butchering an introduction, it's actually pretty easy to introduce you because you're such an amazingly talented, wonderful person. Because this is a new thing, at least on the show, because I know your work from comics. I've never known your work from a prose standpoint. I'm jumping ahead of myself as I normally do. For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
Yes. So as you said, kind of my creative writing started off in comic books. And you can kind of see them here on my back wall, in fact. So let me get it right. So nearest my head there is the Milford Green saga. Next to it, Access Denied. Those were both with my co-creator of Milford Green, Michael Hankinen. Those were both done through Kickstarter. Then on the top line there, you got Project Hoax, which was with Dan Butcher. And then in the middle there, you got the S Factor, which was with a French artist, Chris Panda. And then Band of Warriors there, which was another comic book series that I did, which was with a guy called Federico Alves. So that was my kind of, I'd been doing that since 2018. And just in the past couple of years, well, actually, probably just really the past year, I've been focusing on my novel writing skills. It's been quite a journey with all of that, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of all of that. But Alpha Guard is the novel that I'm currently writing and serializing on Substack, which has been a lot of fun.
That's kind of an interesting, that's one of my questions down the road here, but let's kind of jump into that because Substack is mainly known for being a newsletter. It's mainly known for publications that are out there to kind of reach a different audience, so to speak, when it comes to the generalization of content that is out there. I know Two Geeks Talking has its own Substack as well, and it's just literally an end of month post of what the heck's been on the show. Because you're publishing an actual novel, chapter by chapter, for free on Substack, why and how and why?
Exactly. Those are really good questions, actually. So when I kind of come up with the idea of Alpha Guard, I was wondering how I'm going to go about actually getting it out to the world. And I'd actually watched a lecture with Andy Weir, the author of The Martian and Project Hail Mary. And he originally, he just posted on a blog like in the early 2000s, I think it was. And, he's a software engineer by trade. So he actually kind of built his own website and things like that. He literally serialized it on his blog back in the early 2000s. And eventually self-published it, and then that led him to obviously get a really big publishing deal and a movie deal and things like that. And I just thought, okay, I could just basically try and follow that blueprint. But because these days we have such amazing tools for free at our fingertips, and Substack seemed to be a really good way to do that, where you can have kind of like the free level,
Mhm.
of course, and then people can pay for it as well. I mean, you could do paid subscriptions for like with stuff behind a paywall. I don't have a paywall on any of mine. People have paid for my writing despite me it all being free, which is amazing. So thank you to all of those supporters that have done that. You didn't have to, but it helps keep the caffeine running through my blood. So that's much appreciated. Um, but yeah, no, Substack just seems to be a really good platform for writers. The app is really good. Reading it simple. The AI voiceover is generally pretty good as well. If you just you only have time to listen to it, on your commute or something like that. And in actual fact, I've turned AlphaGuard. I've actually AI voiceovered it for people, so you can actually listen to it different to the native Substack um, AI voiceover. And I've actually uploaded it as a podcast as well, so you can listen to it on Spotify anywhere
Nice.
where you can actually get a podcast, as well as Substack, of course.
Wow. Okay. So you've just kind of jumped into a whole other avenue I wasn't really going to go into, but let's
Yeah,
dive into it
sorry,
here.
Kurt.
No, no, no. This is good because AI is on the front of everyone's mind, and especially being a
Yes.
creative person,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that you can take AI as coming for your jobs, coming for your thing, and we've already
Hmm.
seen that happening. And in fact, there
Yeah.
was an image that basically said the multimillionaires of Hollywood were always angry at, say, websites like Pirate Bay, things like that.
Hmm.
But as soon as AI came into play, multimillionaires just seem to be, fine with AI because it's
Embracing it.
stealing from the creativity of others. It feels like it's a horrible dystopian situation, not unlike what AlphaGuard is actually going through. So
Exactly.
you're bringing like the future to the present here, man. Like AI voiceover. Why did you want to go that route when you could have just made it a podcast yourself and done the same aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of say it in the preamble before the chapters, both in writing on Substack and on the podcast version, the audio version. For the time being, the reason that I'm using an AI voiceover so that people can listen to it is because it's free.
Mhm.
Right. For me, it's a really low cost way to turn it into audio. There are mistakes in it. There are bits where, it goes way weird and things like that. So it is far from kind of what I'd like to actually have it be one day. The aspiration for me is to, once got the novel completed, then I'll hire like a human to actually do the voiceover for the audio book, but just temporarily whilst I'm making it free for everyone to read in this first draft incarnation of it. Yeah, it's a good way just to get it out to more people because not everybody's gonna read it through text. But yeah, making it available on audio is a good way to just have more reach. I mean, it also brings a different element to it because that's the AI voiceover that I've found is actually kind of pretty much what I have in my head of how AlphaGuard sounds and how I'd like the voiceover to actually be ish. Like,
It's not like you could hire the voice actor that did the Doomslayer and do it that way.
yeah,
I mean, that might be a
yeah.
little too hardcore, but it'd still be pretty cool. I have to.
Ah, well, and I definitely listen to the first chapter of that for sure and see what I think.
You're looking at this as a long term goal is really what it
Mm-mm.
boils down to. You're trying to create a prose series that people will come back and read, and that's commendable. I mean, it's wonderful to see that you're actively doing this, and you've put in the caveats in your Substack, and you've done all of that. You've given the due diligence as a creative person, saying, "Hey, this is just temporary. I'm going to go to for an actual person. Don't lynch me."
Yes. Yes, please don't. Yeah, God's sake.
But let's dive into the actual Alpha Guard itself here. What was the pivotal moment or experience that inspired you to create a Jack Reacher in space? Which, by the way, that's a great tagline. I do love that.
Yeah, that does seem to land with people. Jack Reacher in space, um, and it was really after watching the first season
Yeah,
of Reacher, like a couple of years ago. I think that first season came out, and then I kind of went on a Jack Reacher reading binge, of several of the novels, and then kind of, yeah, by complete algorithmic coincidence, an advert for Lee Child's BBC Maestro course came up, which is like, the masterclass
yeah,
type of video courses. So I did that, um, and found that really inspiring about how he went about actually creating Jack Reacher in the first place, and who he was as well. Where what kind of the history is of a Jack Reacher type character, and the fact that really it's Jack Reacher is the knight errant.
yeah.
This type of story has been around for 1,000 years at least. And no, actually a few thousand years. It started off in ancient Greece, really. The knight errant type ones. And then yeah, no, so as a sci-fi nut as I am, I just thought, what would it be like if Jack Reacher was in space? And then it kind of all blossomed from there, basically.
And by the way, I couldn't tell you were a sci-fi geek whatsoever because of the posters behind you. What? No, it just didn't
Yeah,
didn't
no,
trigger
no, not at
whatsoever.
all. Straight up, man.
It's funny because you've had a wide background in terms of creative writing and in terms of genres and world building that you've done. With your previous experience and with all of these inspirations with Lee Childs and looking into the Jack Reacher worlds and fandoms and everything like that, why was the development of the main character and the Mars setting important?
Mars is really kind of, it's really the next frontier. I think it's really exciting. The potential of humans getting to Mars. Hopefully fairly soon, or at least within my lifetime, we'll get humans to Mars. And yeah, just everything that I read about actually getting humans to Mars and the developments that we'll have to make just kind of made me really excited about what that could turn into, and then actually combining that with my childhood. I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up with Optimus Prime and Lion-O. So I've always had an affinity with those lone leader types of characters. And so yeah, the excitement of kind of us trying to get to Mars, in combination with my childhood kind of role models who were Optimus Prime and Lion-O, is I just mashed it all up.
I know they were trying to sell toys, but still, they were a part of our childhood. They give us the
Absolutely.
moral ground that our
Yeah.
parents who gave
Yeah.
us latch keys to come in and out of the house.
Exactly.
Play till the lights came on at night, etc. I feel old now, but still, it's just comes down to it was a different time and a different era of storytelling, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that we kind of need. And I know everything is cyclical when it comes to the creative process, and we see what was cool in the 90s is back now, or maybe it's the 2000s. I don't know. It's a 20-year cycle, so
Yes.
who knows what's happening or specifically. What were three most challenging aspects of the world building side of this novel series? Because I have a feeling it's going to be a series. Like if once you start down the Jack Reacher path, you're going to have at least 3 to 6 novels at least for sure. But what were the challenging aspects, three of them, for world building for a futuristic Mars, especially 300 years in the future? Sci-fi gives you such a broad range, but how did you
Yes.
narrow it down?
Yes, that's a really good question. And yeah, just to clarify, I do have a series, this turning into a series in mind. I've got a couple of ideas for follow-ups. But I've got to focus on this first one first. Um, But yeah, no, narrowing it down in terms of kind of, specifically being 300 years in the future, I think, from where we are right now, 300 years in the future, you could probably have, you know, approaching 100,000 people on Mars, for instance, like realistically, potentially have 100,000 people on Mars. So I'm trying to make it as somewhat realistic as possible. And that first challenge in terms of actually the world building itself was were the type of settlements to have on Mars. Um, and the way kind of the stages of any kind of Mars colonization plans go, the first thing really is to protect us from solar radiation. That's the biggest obstacle that we face, because if Starship manages to get there, land, and they can live on Starship for a certain period of time, but any more than 2 or 3 years, you're going to be starting to get some pretty serious cancers, like with those people because of the solar radiation. So we've really got to think about, okay, we've got to protect ourselves as quickly as possible, and the quickest way to do that is in the lava tubes. So you've got these huge lava tubes throughout, underground, throughout Mars, like much bigger than here on Earth. So you can absolutely start there. So you descend into the lava tubes, you set up your prefab habitats within that, and that's where it starts. Now, from there, then you can kind of like build up a base of engineers, and scientists to work out kind of the like how do we actually start to build a proper civilization here. And the next step is probably actually setting um, uh, kind of an apartment building within the crater of a wall, and you want to do it as a low point as possible. Um, so, for instance, where I actually set Alpha Guard is in actually one of the Martian rover landing sites, which is Jezero Crater, right? And I think it's about 3 or 4 thousand meters below the before below the medium of Mars, and so kind of that reduces the solar radiation being below the medium, but then also being in the wall of a crater also obviously protects you from the solar radiation as well. So that second settlement is in the pods, but then kind of like putting my creative mind to work, that's only going to last so long, like in these claustrophobic tunnels and small studio apartments. The billionaires of the world aren't going to want to live in a studio apartment. Basically, they want space. And so my second thought was that we'll do the same again, but instead of you know have it still within the wall of a crater, but open it up, right? So you actually kind of turn it into a shopping center, right? A shopping center style thing with a skylight overhead, and that idea came from do you know the line that they're trying to build in Saudi Arabia,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Neom? Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
yeah.
But it is, it's nuts, but it's really cool. Like if they pull it off, amazing. But yeah, that's kind of the idea of what that second settlement would be. And then I've kind of really gone for it on this one. So, actually building, geodesic domes on the surface. Um, you could make multiple ones of them, but again, you got to protect yourself from solar radiation. And so I've basically made up a technology that enables them to have clear um, panels for the dome, um, that protect them from the radiation. So they've been able to create this kilometer high dome, um, and the central structure is called the diamond, which is where the the most rich person in the solar system lives. Tristan Andras, and Andras Corp is the most rich company in the solar system, basically. Um, and yeah, you're introduced to that in the first chapter. But yeah, that's kind of like the three settlements. So actually trying to work out all of that and how it works and how it actually links up as well. Like in terms of actual, highways and trains and public transport and stuff. So I have that kind of all worked out, and I've got a map in that I've got. I need to share that actually on the
Yeah.
Substack, so I'll do that. And then the second challenge is, what type of society, really, what type of society is actually going to be built? And thankfully, the ancient Greeks did a lot of thinking on this, so that was really helpful to read through all of the ideas on the types of societies to have. And yeah, I landed on, it should just be Plato's Republic,
Mm.
basically. So you have like these different levels of citizens, um, and at the top, well, kind of at the top, those looking after the people are guardians, and you have one guardian per 5,000 people. um, and so yeah, later on you're introduced to more kind of how the political system works on Mars. And then yeah, the third one is actually kind of how the people of the pods speak. um, and I've touched on that on the first chapter. And you know, a, a big inspiration for that is the Expanse,
Yeah.
and the Belters, because they're a real mishmash of nationalities from Earth, um, you know, their ancestry, and so they've got real kind of broken English, and so it's the same for the pods. It's quite broken English. They totally understand each other, and um, I guess like traditional English speakers understand them, but it's quite different in that sense. But yeah, no, those were the three biggest challenges.
The Expanse was a great series, and it's funny. I still have to watch the final season. Never got a chance to yet. I know it's a few
Mm.
years old, but give me a break. I'm one person, so
Yeah,
don't take away my geek card. But
never.
I thought that was interesting. I think that's something that we look at how language evolves, and we look at how language is evolving currently. Even now, today, we see this generation speaking whoever knows what the heck that is. And, we're either in awe or in shock as to how they can communicate. I'm glad to see that you've figured out the future tense and future speak of your world. You could have said it. I took inspiration from this generation, and I would have said,
Yes,
"Yeah, sure,
definitely.
no
Yeah, yeah,
problem."
yeah.
But the
Go with
Expanse
it.
is a better idea, so I like that. That's good.
Thanks, man.
Obviously, a lot of research went into this here. I can hear it in what you've done here. What did you learn from Lee Childs, and what did you learn from your own research? Could maybe help other writers that are taking this first prose path.
The biggest thing with novel writing, and any writing really, is really just to chain yourself to your desk and make it happen, for sure. And I mean, for me, outlining has been really important, particularly when you've got something as expansive as this world that I'm curating. Um, because there's lots of complications. I know that Lee Child famously doesn't write an outline. He might have like the final scene in his head, and he just starts to pants from there, basically. um, but yeah, for me, particularly with creating a world in the future, you really have to kind of outline so that you're not going to make mistakes on the way. If you're writing a novel in the present day, it's slightly easier because, well, I'm not sure if it's easier, but it's certainly kind of like the structure is there in terms of like you just follow the structure that's in the world already. But in the future, I'm trying to think about, what technology they've got in the future, what's the political system, and things like that. And AI comes into that. AI is part of the governance
Yeah.
in on Mars. So it's pretty nuts. So the biggest thing for me is, the biggest tips that I can give someone is outline it. And even if it's like just a bullet point outline, just so that you've got some sense of idea of where you're going, particularly in sci-fi and fantasy, I think. Um, and yeah, just make sure that you chain yourself to your desk. And the way that I chain myself is with my headphones, you know. And yeah, just like you've got to stay at your desk, and even if you're not writing, just reread your stuff and it will come. And I have to tell myself that all the time, because I'm doing this in my spare time. I've got two young kids, so I can only commit to like 2 or 3 evenings a week to write, and it's evenings because I've got a day job and things. So I'm doing this in my spare time. So yeah, just try and be disciplined.
It's good to be disciplined, but it's also good to have your goals too. The fact that you're locked in for say 3 to 6 hours, let's say at best,
Yes.
maybe 3 to 4
Yeah.
hours or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be, that's at least focused time where you're there. You're in your zone, you have no distractions. Like that's basically as close to inner peace as you can get.
Yes. Oh, yeah. 100%. I agree, man. That's what I feel like, particularly with the madness of two young kids
Mm.
just messing up their living room and dining room like every day, like with all of their toys like everywhere. They're like, come into my office here, and it's like, ah, right, let's get to it.
The fact that it is, of course, Jack Reacher in space, Alpha Guard, you have everything that you've talked about from AI to the political system, language, etc. Here, sci-fi is a wonderful world that has many different elements. How do you mix that with the thriller side of things when it comes to, of course, the Alpha Guard series?
It's a delicate balance because I'm doing a sci-fi thriller, and I wouldn't say it's a hard sci-fi by any stretch. It's not a Dune or something like that. Um, it's or like a what do you call it, Children of Time or something. It's yeah, I'm trying to kind of make it like a traditional thriller, but like the setting just happens to be sci-fi.
Mm.
So like in terms of like explaining the sci-fi, I try to be as brief and as simple as possible, so that I'm not overloading somebody that doesn't traditionally read sci-fi, for instance. But they'll see like the beats of a thriller coming through. So I'm trying to bring like sci-fi readers and thriller readers together. That's my plan, at least. um and meet somewhere in the middle, where everybody's enjoying it.
That's good though. I mean, look, I've enjoyed the first chapter. I definitely want to read more of it. What's your release schedule for this? Is this like a weekly, bi-weekly? Like, why did you decide whatever this release schedule is?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I started off doing it monthly, but I'm struggling to stick to that. It's looking like it's more like every 2 months at the moment, one chapter every 2 months. Part of that is because I'm still at the beginning and things. There are things like as I'm writing it, I've tried to work out as much as I can beforehand, but there are elements as I'm writing it where I'm realizing, right, I need to think about that a bit more before finalizing what that person is like, what their reaction is like. And also kind of, yeah, again, going back to kind of, the foundations in terms of the political system, and, what the media is like
Hmm.
and things like that. So yeah, it took some time to think about that. I feel like I've really started to, flesh that out. So hopefully the release schedule will be a lot easier as maybe I get into kind of chapter 7 or 6, 7 or 8 rather. I'm currently on chapter 5. Um, so yeah, I'm almost there in terms of like really setting the foundations. I've got like the whole story in my head. It's just like it's really those details, like the small details, that make, and hopefully that makes the difference in terms of it being a compelling story.
So talk about the main cast of characters, the ones that you can talk about, protagonist, antagonist, and any supporting cast that we may be drawn to. And besides the main character, obviously you're drawn to that amazing character as it is. Who's your other favorite that you're like, oh yeah, I love writing this character? So main cast, supporting cast,
Yes.
antagonist, and who's your second favorite character?
So yeah, no, main cast wise, obviously there's Alpha Guard. In that first chapter, you learn that he moved to Mars 20 years ago, um, and he moved there in his late teens. So now he's kind of in his late 30s. He started off in the pods as well because there's a funded ticket system where you can get a free ticket to Mars if you work in the lava tube farms. So going back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of the different levels of settlement, the lava tubes are now the farms and resource mines, and that's where everybody in the pods works, right? But they work for their ticket initially to Mars, but as well as their studio apartment as well. Um, and so yeah, he started off there, but managed to kind of buy his way out of being a worker bee from the pods. Um, and he did that with the assistance of a chap called Eric Green, who's his handler. He's a square-jawed Scotsman, 6'6", built like a
Wow.
Viking. But he's kind of like in his 60s, so he's a bit long in the tooth. And obviously took Alpha Guard under his wing. And in that first chapter, again, you learn how they met. Alpha Guard had just arrived on Mars, and a gang of young lads were trying to take his food basically. And then Eric Green stepped in and helped him out. Um, but yeah, so those uh, the protagonist and the main supporting uh, protagonist, and then the one antagonist that you would have read in um, that first chapter is Tristan Andras. So he is an outlandish trillionaire, and as I mentioned before, Andras Corp is the richest and most valuable company in the solar system, and he's really responsible for a lot of the advancements in terms of commercial travel throughout the solar system, amongst many other things. And one of the things that he came up with, which is what you learn in later chapters, is that he helped create the AI governance model on Mars called Plato, um, which is programmable law and what was it? Automated something or other. I forget the acronym that I came up with, but yeah, it's along those lines. And yeah, he's going to be an important antagonist to this in the future. And in that second chapter as well, you meet Amrita Andras, who's his wife, um, and she's like 20 years younger than Tristan Andras, and he's in his 80s. But of course, life expectancy is a lot more in the future. So people generally live for 150 years now. So he's only like middle aged. Um, and yeah, no, she's also an important character in this. Yeah.
Who's your favorite character to write?
Yes, he's my favorite characters. Right, I do. Eric, you know what? Eric Green
Yeah.
is fun. Has been a lot of fun because he's basically the guy in the chair, for Alpha Guard, and he just gets to come in with like small witty quips as Alpha Guard is trying to sort all this stuff out on the ground. Then he just, says, well, you didn't need to do that, did you? And stuff like this, just like really annoying.
It's almost like the captain in those classic buddy cop dramas. Like, you give me your
Yeah.
badge and gun, you destroyed the downtown core there for no apparent reason.
Yes, exactly. What were you thinking?
Yeah. My car was there. I had just two more payments left, like
Yeah,
things like that. That sounds
exactly.
great. I love it. It sounds like you're having fun with the series. I think it's a great
Yeah.
way to kind of stretch your creative writing muscles, so to speak. Because while the limitations of comics are simply the panels and a very tight, shortened script when it comes to dialogue, you
Yes.
have flexibility now to really kind of like just finally stretch those back muscles and say,
Yeah.
I can get into this world. I can do what I need to do. What has been the most freeing thing for you from a creative writing perspective? Because obviously it's there. I can see it in your words. So
Thanks,
what
man.
is what has been your main, like, wow, why didn't I do this sooner moment?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good way to say it. Is that I do wish that I had done this sooner in a lot of ways. I mean, maybe the timing wasn't right, and it is what it is. But in terms of the the opportunities that novel writing actually gives you, coming from the comic book world, as you say, you've got to be really efficient with everything, in terms of story and also yeah, keeping the dialogue tight and everything. So actually being able to explain at length exactly what's going on, and being able to, yeah, do longer pieces of dialogue as well, which has been really fun, and detail as well. And in some ways, that's actually been quite a challenge for me, is to just put in more detail. So often when I write a first draft of a chapter, it can be in the region of 500 to 900 words, and it's like, okay, I now need to go back and actually kind of like, let's put in more explanation about what happened here and things like that. So my comic book writing is still coming through in terms of like being really efficient with the story, but then it's a novel. You can actually breathe and things like that. And as long as it's intriguing, then you can totally take your time, and have more explanation. And what I'm actually utilizing, is it's all in the first person. It's all in the first person from Alpha Guard's perspective, um, and as you would have read in the first chapter, he has a flashback, but there's a flashback in every chapter, basically, to different parts of his life, from when he was on Earth as a child, or in his early years on Mars, basically. But another thing that I've been able to actually do, and you can't often do this in first person, is, so because he's a bodyguard, right? Alpha Guard, um, and a highly technological bodyguard, and so he's got micro drones that he can launch, and you read that in the first paragraph that he's got these micro drones that he can launch off, and what that provides me as the storyteller is that he can actually look at things from other people's perspective, despite being it still being in first person. So he can like go, like a micro drone can go into another room and look at what's happening there, and he can say that because he's looking at it on his heads up display, basically. So I can get away with you know giving more than what a first person story can actually usually do.
Nice.
So that's been a lot of fun.
That's good, and it also kind of gives you, like, from a comic perspective, it gives you like the panels that are outside of that perspective to really kind of dive into
Yeah,
visually. So I think that's
exactly.
that's actually that's a genius move there, man. You've just broken the fourth wall of
Thanks, dude.
writing. Wow.
Awesome. Woo.
Or fifth wall in this case, because it's the future, right? So
Yes, it would be. Yeah, right. I love that. The fifth wall. That's nice, man.
so now your new tagline is breaking the fifth wall of sci-fi.
Yes, I hope you don't mind. I'm
No,
gonna use
go
that.
for it. Credit me in the back of your first book once it gets published there.
I will do. I will do. Thanks, Kurt.
I think it's interesting. Let's go back to Substack real quick, especially when it comes to feedback, metrics, things like that, because that's one thing that Substack really gathers well. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. The metrics you get from people opening, viewing, returning, subscribing, not subscribing, or removing their email address, those bastards, is rather interesting. How's the metrics and feedback been for the series? And how do you gauge success from that information?
Yeah, as you say, the analytics on Substack are really good. They're easily accessible, and you can go into as much detail as you like, really. Yeah, I see that, I've got about 50 subscribers for it at the moment, which I'm quite pleased with. It's only on its fourth chapter, and my publishing schedule hasn't been terribly consistent over the past 6 months. So yeah, I can't shun that too much. And I've had a few people pay for it as well, which is very kind of them. Um, and yeah, um, the insights that I've had, um, really, just seeing that most people open it. It's a bit of a shame that, yeah, not more people have commented so far, but most people open it. Um, but as I'm really just, 10%, like within 10% of the novel written, it's really early days for me. And I'm hoping that, by the time that I get halfway and beyond, that it'll really start to pick up. I've had some nice compliments from other Substack fiction writers, which has been really nice. Um, and that they're a lot more consistent in terms of the number of posts that they're doing. They might have shorter, stories that they're telling, but their engagement seems to be really good. And hopefully, as I get, more regular with my postings, and the fact that, when more of the novel is actually up there, um, I'm hoping that engagement will be better. But yeah.
So the one thing I remember about a past guest, Fred Kennedy, who does an amazing radio drama called Mud 79, which is a Star Wars, not licensed by Disney. It's a fan parody, et cetera, et cetera. You have to say all of those words.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Alpha Guard being in a similar vein where you get to the level of radio drama that I know the UK and BBC is known for worldwide.
Mm.
I think you can get to that level with this style of series so that it's not really just a podcast, it's now an experience.
Awesome. Yeah,
And I really
I
think
love
you
that.
need that level to kind
Yeah,
of bring that story forward, because
yeah.
I would sit for an hour or however long an episode is, and if you have like say 100 of those or 50 or
Mm.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's more engaging from an audiobook perspective
Yeah.
than nothing against your writing.
Not
uh,
at all, man. Yeah.
I could really see this as a radio drama, and I really think
Yeah.
if you want to bring this to that next level, I think
Yeah.
if you're
That'd be
planning
the way to
now
go.
to do that, that's the way to do it. Because I was
100%, man.
fortunate
Agree.
enough to interview Lance Axt from Pocket Universe Productions, who did London After Dark, who's done the new upcoming John Carter radio drama that
Wow.
they announced at San Diego Comic Con. He had nothing but great things to say about how the BBC and how England has done
Mm.
thriller and horror to the point that the US can't even match after 50
Yeah.
to 100 years. So
Yeah.
your level of writing and your style could easily get into that vein. And if you don't start planning now, I'm going to be very disappointed. Just saying.
Kurt, that is a great idea. Um, and it's not something I'd necessarily considered, to get it turned into an audio drama as we go. So yeah, no, I'll definitely try and explore that idea. And if I can get it in front of a, commissioning editor at the BBC, that'd be great.
I don't know what the world of radio drama is in the BBC these days. I'm sure it's in a huge genre still. I mean, you'd have to
It
tell
is.
me.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
Yeah. There's a lot of audio dramas still.
so, what is it about audio dramas from the other side of the pond we don't realize that the BBC is so good at?
They've been doing it for 100 years. You know, the BBC has a long history with audio dramas. It was really, almost how they started out. The audio dramas. Yeah, they've just been going strong ever since, and it's been a real kind of staple of British culture. And we've had some amazing stories come out of that, including Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That started off as an audio drama. It wasn't a book first, it was an audio drama first. And then, well, yeah, audio sci-fi drama. But yeah, that started off as an audio drama and then turned got then Douglas Adams wrote it into a book, and then it got, they tried it out as a TV series and the movie as well. Um, but yeah, I think it's really just kind of like the history that there is, and that history attracts talent that have an affinity with audio dramas. So yeah, that seems to be the be the deciding factor.
I have to ask. I know I've just put the seed into your mind here for this, but who would you want to play Alpha Guard then for your radio drama?
Oh gosh, you learn in these first few chapters that he's from New England, so it's got to be an American voice.
Tom Brady?
Um, and yeah, yeah, Tom Brady, yeah, sure, man, that'd be interesting. I'm trying to, it's got to be somebody quite gruff. I'm trying to think who there is at the moment out there, who's got a really good voice for it. Um,
Tom Hardy wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, actually, that kind of was yeah a thought actually. Yeah, Tom Hardy, would be really interesting. And even I mean, these are two British actors,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean Henry Cavill
Oh yeah. Yeah.
would be great. But yeah, and he's a proper geek himself, so
That's true.
that would be great.
Well, okay. Then here's what you need to do. Start putting together a pitch package.
Bingo. Yeah,
Oh, done.
get it out there to him.
Get it to Tom's people and get it to Henry's people and see. Because honestly, I know you're still fleshing out the world. I know you're still there, but a quick, hey, can I get 5 to 10 minutes just for you to read the first chapter,
Yes.
or just to read however many pages to kind of get that to the BBC. Hey, look, we got Henry Cavill, we got Tom Hardy, we got this.
That'd be epic, wouldn't it?
It's all about the pre-planning phases. This is how Marvel
I don't
got
think
good with the Marvel universe. They started 10, 15 years before everyone else. So
yeah,
now it's up to you to start doing that with AlphaGuard.
that's awesome, man. I really appreciate that idea. I'm gonna have a go at
Good.
that.
Well, hey, I want to be on set when you get Henry Cavill being AlphaGuard or Tom
Absolutely, you'll
Hardy.
be you'll be straight there. You'll be on the red carpet as well.
Love it. That's great. We're wrapping this up here. Obviously, I could talk to you for a long time, but I know you have other obligations. So let's wrap this up by saying, where can we find AlphaGuard? How can we support you in this amazing creative endeavor, and anything else you would like to promote?
Amazing. Yeah, no. So as we said, head over to my Substack, alphagard.substack.com. You can subscribe there for free. If you do want to, go to a paid level just to help me buy a coffee during the week, that'd be great. It's just I think $5 a month is like the lowest level. And I've got a couple of annual subscribers as well. If you wanted to do that, but no obligation. It's all there for free. Feel free to check it out. It's also across podcast apps as well, so Spotify and iTunes and whatnot. So you just search Alpha Guard. It's even on Audible and Amazon Music as well, like as a podcast, because there's podcasts on Audible as well. So yeah, if you search for Alpha Guard across those platforms, it will come up. And yeah, no, the best way that you can support me is by actually listening or reading to it. And then, if you enjoy it, please let me know by leaving a review, and share it with your friends as well. That'd be fantastic. And make sure, yeah, you put comments on the Substack posts and things like that. And yeah, just reach out on social media as well. Samuel G London on X and on Instagram as well. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing you all there.
Well, Samuel, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO or TGTmedia.com. Website's going through a revamp because I'm only one person. Give me a break. Go to our YouTube channel. That's always updated at youtube.com/TGTmedia. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. The watch hours, I don't care about that because that'll never reach 4,000. But you as a subscriber really does matter. So subscribe, like, comment, share, etc., all that other fun stuff. Podcast is back at twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.